Did people, I'm not talking to you here at the moment, Matt. Did people talk to you about how incredible his sermon was?
No.
I heard it over and over again. I'm sick of it.
It was really good, though. I'm just saying.
You could have just left that part out.
And he handled it very well.
Graciously,
He did.
boldly, with dexterity. I mean, I got
Wow.
Look at this.
A lot of
You
adjectives.
should just absolutely been on dictionary.com today.
Hey, thanks for joining us on the ReThink podcast. We've been sitting here for 30 minutes talking about nothing.
Teslas, cats, dogs.
Yeah,
sermons.
causing all kind of stuff, trouble. If we
Well, we've not been funny for a long time.
we've not been funny this morning either.
No, not
We've
really.
just been missing Jeff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We had to
well,
catch
I
up.
I tried to watch some of the podcasts that you guys did without me.
You couldn't do it.
Ooh, rough.
I can't watch the podcast any week.
I don't know if I've ever watched one.
I'll watch the outtakes, but the podcast.
Yeah, I like the outtakes. Those are the best part.
Do you guys watch your own sermons?
Nah.
I do.
You ought to watch your last one, Matt. It was really good.
I do occasionally because I try to pick out the weird things that I do. You know?
Let's not have that conversation today.
Let's just skip that.
Let's move
It's
on.
difficult to watch yourself, though. Yeah, frustrating.
Yeah.
I don't know how people watch it, but we're glad that you do.
2 weeks left of Leviticus.
2 weeks left of Leviticus. We've got a lot to cover this weekend. It's been good. It's been hard, at least from my perspective, and study and prep and trying to make it make sense in 2023. You know, I mean, last week I preached at Clay County while you did that spectacular oration here, and my sermon was okay too.
But no one said.
It wasn't good. It
No
was
one
just
said
okay.
anything.
But it was, the whole sexual regulations that God lays out there in that chapter. And of course, that's obvious and easy to see the conflict, not just in our culture, but in every culture, it seems. But today we're rolling into chapter 23, and it's a whole bunch of festivals and feasts and special days and things that we really don't celebrate, right? And so the challenge with this one is what does this mean? What's the reason for these things, and what does this mean in our life, and how are we going to use this and grow and learn from it?
So let me ask you this question. Like, how did you wake up this morning? Was it by alarm or by, like, rhythm?
Here's how I woke up. Ready? Just children running.
Yeah.
That's
So-
how I woke up.
Well, okay. Like, intentionally waking. Do you set an alarm to get up?
No, because I have one of these. I used to, though.
Yeah.
Now I don't.
So they're always up before you?
Oh, they're up at like 5.
Well, you need to get up earlier then.
Yeah.
Anyway.
do you
Levi.
set an alarm?
Huh? Well, so this is interesting. So I do set an alarm,
I hope it's interesting.
but very rarely will I actually have to use the alarm to, like, get up, if that makes sense.
So if it's a day that you don't need to be somewhere in particular, do you sleep longer or you wake up same time anyway?
Well, I usually wake up and then I have to force if like I know I want to rest more, I have to force myself to go back to sleep. But it's almost like
See, whenever I wake up, man, I'm up. Like, I can't go back to sleep.
I can. I'm like a master of that.
I'm with Matt. We have a kid that wakes us up. Never have to use an alarm.
I mean, we set one. Like, I think Megan sets one every day at 6, but we not even close to it. So
Are you an alarm guy? You don't have you have kids, but
no,
no.
they're 12 and 14 now,
Yeah.
so they
Sleep all day.
you got to wake them up.
bragging.
No, I've been there, done that. Yeah, I need an alarm.
So,
But my body is just requiring too much sleep,
well, it's,
especially since we had that cursed COVID thing. I'm just tired.
well, and we're going through Leviticus, the brain power. Like, you're exhausted at the end of the day studying this stuff. But the thing I see whenever we start this off is we all need reminders of important things that are happening. like getting up and going to work is an important thing, and if you don't do that, there's consequences, right?
Yeah.
So I'm the only one here that values work because I am the only one with an alarm. 'cause
No,
it's
I
a
set
place.
my alarm to make sure I don't forget. You know, like I don't want to miss it. And if I have a meeting, I always set alarms.
See, that's not where I thought you were going to go with that because this is all. A big part of this is about the Sabbath
Yeah, no,
and being in rhythm.
let's
and
not rest. Let's go.
What it just
Reminder.
it's meaning to say is wrong.
I know.
Well, God said you need to rest.
That is true. But let's look at the 10,000-foot picture first, and then let's go to those, because these are all reminders. In my mind, these are all reminders of who God is and what He's done for His people, and then how we respond. And these daily rhythms, these monthly rhythms, these yearly rhythms are all reminders for us that it's something important we need to be reminded of, but then act upon.
I think in some ways, like, I know we've navigated away from those culturally, but in some ways, I feel like those reminders, intentional reminders, would be really beneficial for us. Particularly, I'm thinking Sabbath. Like, we get just bombarded with so many things. Sometimes we don't take intentional time to remember.
I was in Israel last week when you guys tried to do a podcast without me, and Shabbat. I was that's how they say it, Sabbath, Shabbat. I was in Tiberias, right, and so we roll in on Friday afternoon. Things start shutting down early, as you guys know that.
Yep.
In fact, we were going to go up on Mount Arbel, and we did just run out of time.
Right.
It just shuts down, way too early.
4 o'clock.
Well, it shuts down at 2, so they can
Right.
prepare to shut down at 4.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
Don't
I
try
mean-
to cross the barrier either.
No,
At like
you get in trouble.
3:15.
Yeah.
Been there, done that.
I'm thinking, well, if Shabbat is at 6, why do we need to close at 2? But it's because they can't do any work during Shabbat. They can't start fires. They can't start a meal. So if you're going to put something in the crock pot for tomorrow, you got to do it before the start of that time frame. So there's a lot of prep time. So that's why they shut down things early. But we rolled into Tiberias in the bus, and it's traffic like crazy because everybody's out. They're off work. They're going to the market. They're doing their thing to get ready for the rest, right? So it's this frantic pace to get ready for the rest. But the next morning when we wake up, we were going south down to Jericho and to the Dead Sea. So we get up, we get on the bus, we go through town. There's not even like another car.
Mm-hmm.
The stores were all closed. Everything was done, Now, I think they can become legalistic. Obviously, anybody can become legalistic with any rule that's put in place for any reason. But the idea was like really nice, refreshing. Like, let's just pause and reflect. That's the intention of
Yeah,
it.
because we're not talking about doing nothing for the sake of doing nothing.
No,
It's intentional. It's supposed to be.
Right.
that it flows out of the Genesis story. I don't think it has to be tied directly and exclusively to Genesis because it's reinstituted by God with the Israelites. But in Genesis, when God makes everything, He's not tired,
Yeah.
and so the rest is not about not working. It's about the fellowship that He's having with Adam and Eve. If you note at the end of every day, I don't remember which source I read pointed this out, but at the end of every day, it's that was good. There was morning, there was evening, day 1. There was morning, there was evening, day 2. And those are all good. The sixth day when He created man, it's very good. There's morning, there's evening, it's finished. Day 7, there's no conclusion to that. Do you notice that? There's no day 7. God rested. There's morning, there's evening, and it's finished. It was not finished until sin in Genesis chapter 3. Now that particular day was finished, but the rest isn't about ceasing to work exclusively. It's about fellowship. And so God was fellowshipping with Adam and Eve. That continued until we were separated by sin. So I think all of these reminders are about God's desire to be together again with us.
Mm-hmm.
So pause on this Sabbath to reflect upon me and your relationship with me, to draw near to me.
Yeah.
Right?
I think DeFazio said it, we celebrate God's provision, not our productivity. And I think that's something in our culture we could really relearn and be reminded of. Because you talk to people and say, hey, how's your week? It's how busy you were,
Right.
Oh, I'm up early. And
We're all too busy.
Instead of celebrating what God has done, because ultimately the Sabbath is remembering God's provision and his promises, and not our own productivity of what we accomplished this week. It's actually about how God is using us and how he is the one leading and doing these things, and how we celebrate the fact that we get to be a part of that fellowship in the plans of God.
Yeah, sometimes our business becomes our identity, right? Like when you ask somebody, like you just said, how's your week? Well, I've been doing all these things.
Oh, it's crazy.
It's crazy. That it's like that has become our God in a sense of saying, look how important I am.
You know
I'm
what
busy.
that means is that we have become our God,
Right.
Yeah.
because we are our source of provision.
And we take care of.
How's your week been? I've been blessed.
Yeah. It's just a reframing. And so these are whenever we're going through all these, there's 2 days and there's 3 main festivals with some like different feasts and stuff in between there. But these are supposed to help them be reminded of their identity
Yeah.
and whose they are.
Right.
And so God's people get to rest because he is in charge. They don't have to be.
Because they rest in him.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Really, I mean, that's been the theme of the entire thing. You're in the wilderness, and I am the source of your identity.
So I thought DeFazio made an interesting observation about education and learning and our tendency to forget, right? And so he said that that's a part of how we're made, because there's so much stimuli. Think of all your senses and all the information and stuff that comes. You have to forget. You just have to forget. And so learning is about overcoming.
Is that what you told your wife about her birthday too? I have to forget. It's just overwhelming.
You've had so many of them. I've just forgotten. Sorry.
That's Matt Farrar.
My wife's birthday is the 17th of December. Our anniversary is the 23rd, and Christmas is the 25th. That is a built-in plan.
That is a holy week.
That is a backup plan. Like if you forget one, you're not going to miss all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And you can just say,
Good call.
"Well, I'm just getting you one big thing."
See,
But
this
anyway.
is how he turns coal into diamonds right here.
Yeah.
Like, learn from this.
So
Or
Still
just
seems
never
a little
forget.
cheap.
let's go back to DeFazio.
Oh, we're learning
Because
stuff.
he said that you have to forget, right? Because you can't be conscious of every stimuli going on. So your brain's built with that filter. Learning is about overcoming the tendency to forget. So how do we do that? Well, we have reminders. We have reminders of things that are important to us. And he's arguing, and I think it makes sense, that God is instituting this calendar of Jewish life to be a reminder to them that he is their God. He's the one leading. They're his people. He's providing. He's protecting. And there are regular, weekly, annual, cyclical reminders that he is your everything. And that's ultimately the message here. He wants to draw near to you, and he's reminding you he's taking care of you.
I think it's really cool that the calendar year for the Jewish calendar starts with Passover, because that is the story of God's ultimate grace, of his direction, of his deliverance. And I mean, that ties into the New Testament, how all that, that's a whole sermon in itself.
That's what I was thinking as I was working on this message, is each of these feasts really deserve a lot of time and explanation.
Yeah.
Passover is a huge deal.
Yeah. And then, well, what's really cool, and I was
Exodus is the story.
Yeah,
Maybe people don't know that.
Yeah, it's a story of, setting the captives free.
Right.
Which Jesus plays on in the New Testament.
Luke chapter 4,
Yep.
quoting from Isaiah, I came to set the captives free, proclaim the year of the Lord's favor.
Yeah, which I'm going to preach that next week, so I don't want to get into that. But the end of the Passover the end of the Passover, they do this thing. It's the offering of the first fruits. And so if you go to Jesus's the Holy Week there, we call it Holy Week or whatever, the Passion Week. So he's crucified at the end of the week, right? Leading up to Passover on the
Which would
Shabbat.
have been Friday.
So you have the Sabbath represented, you have the Passover, and 3 days later, which would be
For
Sunday.
fruits. Yeah.
That is whenever you would offer this first fruit offering, saying, God has provided for us. We remember that, but we're celebrating what he's going to do, and we're trusting him with our future as well. And Jesus, Paul refers to Jesus as he is the first fruit offering.
First fruits from amongst the dead.
Yep.
Just in case you're wondering if this all happened by chance or Roman authority or things gone astray, no. 1400 plus years ago, God set in place a calendar
Yeah.
that would lead to the ultimate restoration and the freedom from slavery of sin and its consequences.
Which is one of the reasons, gotta get my words in, that it's important to see that God is the same God in the Old Testament as he is in the New Testament, because like everything goes together. They're connected together. And so just with that example, it's
So
prime example.
then you move. So Pentecost.
Wait, I'm not done. I
Okay.
got a Passover thing real
Okay.
quick. So
Don't pass over it.
yeah, we
Oh,
in
I see
Jerusalem.
what you did there.
We're supposed to go. We're supposed to go look at the southern steps, the entryway to the temple for the time of Christ. And so, if you guys remember, there's that archaeological park there. Well, when we arrived there, it was closed. Right, so we re-navigated, did the Western Wall, did the rabbis' tunnels and things. When we come back out, fortunately, it was open, and I was glad because Kevin Colclaser preaches at Scott Avenue in Newton was with us, and I really wanted to show Kevin that inscription on the stone that lays at the southwest corner of the Temple Mount, that stone that fell off the top,
Trumpeter stone.
the trumpeter stone, the stone that says this is where the guy blew the trumpet
Yeah.
when the sacrifice is being offered for the people. Right? And when did that happen?
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock.
Yep.
When did Jesus die?
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock.
Yeah.
The lamb is being slain. It is finished.
Yep.
Man, that is just so...
Powerful.
And I was going to say, so that's prescribed back here in Leviticus that it's announced with a trumpet.
Yeah.
The sacrifice is announced with a trumpet. Yeah. That's pretty awesome.
God's story is just so tightly woven. So we get the Passover, which now we take communion every week, which we're going to talk about in a couple of weeks, why we do what we do, the way we do it,
Yep.
about communion. But it just grows right out of this story. Right? And these feasts that God's prescribing is a remembrance of coming out of slavery. It's beautiful.
So then you have Pentecost, 50 days after, 7 weeks.
Sevens.
Yeah, Festival of Weeks, which would have been basically out of Egypt to the foot of Mount Sinai, giving the law. So about 50 days in the wilderness there. And once again, another incredible tie-in. So they received the law, 50 days.
Is his audio up? It seems like he's quiet in my ears. I mean, this is so rich. I just want to make sure everybody can hear every word that he says.
So 50, well, you go 49 days, 7 weeks, and then on the 50th day you celebrate it, and it's a celebration of giving of the law. New Testament, so we have the Passover. Jesus is the sacrifice. He's the first fruit from the dead. And what happens? 49 plus 1, you have the day of Pentecost.
Acts 2.
Yep, where 3,000 people die at the foot of Mount Sinai.
Because they
Disobedience.
popped out a golden calf.
Yep.
Yeah, Aaron, thank you.
And then you have 3,000 that submit their lives to Christ in the new covenant, Pentecost.
Law, sacrifice, and grace.
Yep.
These are so clearly tied to Jesus. It's crazy. I love the way God's so much a master of all things time. Everything ties to the past and the future. Pentecost.
Well, and then
Here we go.
Then you have the tabernacle, the festival of booths, or
Tabernacles or booths.
yeah, and it celebrates God's provision for them in the wilderness. And so,
We skipped the Day of Atonement.
yeah, I know that's a day. So we have 2 days, 3 festivals. We can come back to the Day of Atonement.
Please, yeah.
But the Festival of Booths is this celebration of God's provision and direction as He is with them, guiding them along the way. So, okay, let's take.
So the people are supposed to sleep outside for a week
Yep. And
to remember when they wandered.
yep.
It's just crazy.
Yeah. So tie into the New Testament. What does Jesus do? He comes and tabernacles among us,
He is the tabernacle, right?
but He sends the Spirit to then lead us and guide us in truth as He directs us along the way, from leading us from one place to another.
I think Paul, when he in 2 Corinthians chapter 5 is talking about the body and the spirit and death and life, he says we dwell in a tent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the who we are is this is just a tent. It's a tabernacle,
Yep.
Yeah.
right? It's a temporary dwelling, and we are the temple of the dwelling place of God. Pretty awesome.
Yeah, so all those things are like a picture how Jesus is the ultimate fulfillment of all those things. I just think that's amazing. Then you get to the Day of Atonement, which calendar year, so it's out of order in the scripture there, but the Day of Atonement's actually between the it's right before the tabernacle, Festival of Tabernacle. It actually starts the 7th month. And the
10th day of the 7th month.
Yeah. So, but you know that
So 5 days
we
before
spent a whole
Tabernacles.
sermon on the Day of Atonement, how big of a deal that is. Once a year.
So that happens, and then 5 days later we start the tabernacling.
Right. Yep.
And we jumped over. It's kind of a smaller. I don't know what you say smaller, but the Lord said to Moses, "Say to the Israelites on the first day of the 7th month." So you got the 1st, the 10th, the 15th. The 7th month is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
The first day of the month, which was actually the new year, right? There's the blowing of the trumpets.
Mm-hmm.
What's the point of that?
It's calling to the sacrifice, right? I believe so.
Commemorate with trumpet blast. Do no regular work, but present an offering made to the Lord by fire.
Mm-hmm.
I'm lost on this one.
So that's your burnt offering.
Did he's time out in the podcast?
So the burnt offering, has to be ushered in before the atoning offering.
Right. Okay. There you go.
So if you go back, and that's why setting the first.
So that's the burnt offering, so the priest can offer the offering.
Yeah, and so that initiates this process of the people getting right with one another. So you go and you have a few days to get right with everyone else before you go and get right as a community with God.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this remembrance of the past to alter the present and prepare for the future. God is so. This story is so intricately woven. His ultimate goal is what? Come with me, Jesus says, and I'll give you rest. Not momentary, but eternal.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Not partial, but complete.
Mm-hmm.
With me. Yeah, beautiful. We could go more. Do you want to?
No.
Okay, you got 3 characters left.
No, I added to
you
the
used-
podcast
whoa,
last week.
Shut her down.
Okay,
We
the
just need
Gospel
it, like,
of John.
bleeped out.
The Gospel of John, though, highlights these festivals
Mm-hmm.
over and over again, and like shows how Jesus fulfills them, and is like the better part. Like, chapter 5 is one festival, chapter 6 is one, 7 is one, 8. Like, they keep going over and over, and so it also gives you little time markers in the Gospel of John. Sorry, I've been teaching DTI, so we've been
That's good.
going through all this.
And everywhere you go, Jesus he's doing stuff all the time, but it's noted repeatedly. He did this on the Sabbath. Do this on the Sabbath. That's not on accident. It's
And-
on purpose,
Yeah.
right? It's to point out that he is the fulfillment of all this in Leviticus 23 and 4.
He is the rest.
He is the Sabbath. He doesn't need a day. He is the rest. Come join with him. Good stuff. All right, we're finished for today. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on the ReThink podcast.